To the topic, just two brief announcements. The event will be held in English, but there are headphones if you want to have the translation into Arabic, and please put your mobile phones on silent. So today we are going to take you to the sea, but this is also linked always to our topic of the climate talks. So just to recall you what the Cairo Climate Talks are, they are a platform for exchange and cooperation on topics related to climate change. And they were established by the German embassy together with its partners, the Ministry of Environmental Affairs, the German Cooperation Agency, GIZ, and many others. The Ministry of Environmental Affairs, Dr. Khalid Fahmy, would have liked to be here. Unfortunately, he cannot. But we are very honored to have the Deputy Head of Mission of the German Embassy, Mr. Christoph Retzlaff, among us, who will give us a welcoming note just after my introduction. So definitely, Cairo is not a city on the seashore, but today we will move to the sea, unfortunately not to admire the beautiful color of the water or to take just a brief swim or to be on the beaches and the rocks. But we have to discuss how we can preserve these shores and the land behind in times of changing climate and ensuing sea level rise. SLR, sea level rise, is the abbreviation you will hear all throughout the evening, so this is why I introduce it right now. We have three esteemed experts here. Before I introduce them, let me just mention two important figures. At the current stage of global warming, experts from the IPCC, so the Interdisciplinary Panel on Climate Change, expect a sea level rise between 28 and nearly 1 meter until the year 2100. That might not sound so much to you, but if you consider that the Nile Delta is already partly below the sea level and that it's sinking every year, you will understand the two other figures. 4,500 square kilometers of agricultural land could be affected, and 6 million people also affected and perhaps even displaced. So far from my side, I won't say more because I know that Mr. Retzlaff has also some substantial input for us, and afterwards we will come to our experts. So please, Christoph Retzlaff, Deputy Head of Mission for the German Embassy, the floor is yours.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Assistant Minister Mohamed Rami, Dr. Roman Lukscheiter, dear panelists, dear Cairo climate talkers. Let me immodestly start with some philosophy tonight. Actually, great philosophy can sometimes reduce complex problems to a few words, and let me give you a striking example for the topic we discussed tonight. The famous French philosopher once stated, "Men argue and nature acts." Indeed, nature acts. If we reach a comprehensive climate agreement in Paris later this year, that means restricting global warming to 2 degrees Celsius. Nevertheless, consequences will be severe. Melting polar caps and weather extremes are already now threatening our coastlines. And this might come as a surprise. Egypt is highly vulnerable and will be disproportionately affected by sea level rise. Indeed, and Voltaire is right, men argue about climate change, just as we do tonight. I'm, however, convinced that discussing such complex issues and therefore bringing them to public attention is indispensable, especially if words are followed by action. What does climate change mean for Egypt? Egyptian coasts are exceptionally vulnerable to climate change. Consequences of sea level rise are multifaceted. Coastlines are densely populated, and industries have strategically settled near harbors along the Mediterranean. Cities such as Alexandria, Damietta, and Port Said are among the most vulnerable ones. Rising sea levels might cause millions of inhabitants to move from their homes and industries to relocate. Moreover, the Nile Delta is the most intensively cultivated part of Egypt's land. Saltwater intrusion is detrimental to agriculture and threatens food security in the long run. It is therefore high time to join forces now and to work together on a comprehensive strategy. Adaptation and mitigation are equally important, since future costs will be much higher if impending risks are ignored now. You might, of course, wonder why we as diplomats care about such seemingly very technical issues as coastal zone management. But climate change is indeed in general, and sea level rise in particular, are indeed highly political topics. The severe consequences of sea level rise for food security and the availability of water and arable land have the potential to destabilize states and whole regions. The urgent need to act, however, might also have a positive effect. The rising level of the Mediterranean is a regional challenge that requires a regional cooperative solution. In this regard, international relations come into play. In Northern Europe, for example, imminent sea level rise triggered a trilateral agreement between Germany, the Netherlands, and Denmark, followed by trilateral action taken. Germany's north coast will be similarly affected by sea level rise. I'm therefore very glad to welcome a German expert tonight who worked on coastal zone management in both Germany and Egypt, and on the question of how approaches to mitigation and adaptation are transferable. An approach which might be interesting for both our countries is the tool of coastal ecosystem services. It means assigning a social, economic, cultural, environmental, or military value to coastal zones, which helps to develop a comprehensive management strategy. Coming back, and also coming to an end here, coming back to my initial quote about arguing and acting, fora like this one tonight bring together experts from academia, politics, civil society, and private sector in order to discuss comprehensive approaches. Bearing in mind that nature acts unimpressed by our words, we do hope, of course, that this event contributes to concrete outcomes which may later be translated into action. In this sense, I wish you all a productive evening and very fruitful discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this welcoming note, reminding us of the political context and of the fact that indeed nature acts and is already acting, and that we have to discuss, if not to argue about it. Now let me introduce our three panelists, and I will start with our guest from Germany sitting in the middle. Dr. Peter Michael Link is currently working as a postdoctoral researcher at the research group Climate Change and Security at the University of Hamburg in Germany. He studied environmental sciences at the University of California, Berkeley in the United States, and geography at the University of Kiel. And he did his PhD, not about the Nile, not about the Mediterranean, but about the Barents Sea fisheries, or to be more precise, on the economic impacts of changes in the warm, cold water circulation in the world's oceans. He's speaker of the Coastal and Marine Working Group of the German Geographical Society and board member of the Coastal and Marine Specialty Group of the Association of American Geographers. Thank you for coming all the way from Hamburg and for bringing us insights from other shores. Let us move on to Dr. Khaled Khaireddin, who is sitting on the right from your perspective. He is the head of the Environment and Climate Research Institute, which is related to the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation. Dr. Khaled Khaireddin holds a master's degree in irrigation and water engineering from Ain Shams University and a PhD from Colorado State University in water resources and water engineering. He has been working, among others, as a senior water resources consultant for German cooperation agency GIZ, and in different projects concerning the Alexandria coastal zone, the Nile Delta, and northern Sinai. He has also been employed as an expert in Yemen, Syria, and Saudi Arabia, and he has been a visiting professor at Wagga Wagga University in Australia. As for all our experts, unfortunately, I apologize that I won't have the time to list all their important publications, but of course there are important publications related to our topic tonight. Thank you for being with us. And last but not least, we have Dr. Mohamed Bayoumi. He's currently working at the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, as an assistant resident representative and environment team leader, and he oversees their many different projects implemented in cooperation with the Egyptian government. And these projects are in the areas of climate change mitigation and adaptation, of sustainable transport, renewable energy, waste management, and conservation of biodiversity. He studied engineering at Cairo University and holds a master's and a PhD degree in environmental engineering from the University of Southampton in Great Britain. The linkage between poverty alleviation, natural resources management, and global environment issues was always at the core of his different responsibilities. So I think this is also at the core of what we are discussing tonight. Thank you for being with us. Now, this is how we will proceed. We will have several rounds of questions on the panel, and afterwards we will ask for your questions. And those of you who came before know already the method. In the folder you received, there's this small paper, this sticky note, and we would kindly ask you to write down your question and hand it to my colleagues. You can write it down in Arabic. We have the possibility to translate it. I know there are some disadvantages to this method. I know some of you would like to give a comment, but just keep this, please, for the social gathering after, around the dinner buffet. And the advantage of the method is that we can take more questions, and that you have also the chance to put down already on the paper to whom you direct your question. So now I have to move. Okay, and sit down here. And now to start, I would like that we give a more detailed view about what the sea level rise means for Egypt. Let us start with you, Dr. Khaled Khaireddin. Could you give us a very brief insight in what is going to happen to the coast in Egypt if we have these between 30 centimeters or even 1 meter of sea level rise, and there are even estimations going further up in the coming decades?
Actually, rising the sea level, the seawater level on the northern coast of Egypt will cause a significant problem for the northern coastal coverage. Starting from Alexandria, where so many parts of the Alexandria can be submerged and inundated by the seawater, especially the area which has significant amount of industries, especially oil industries and everything. This area is below the sea level originally. Accordingly, it will be significant harm for this area. If we go to Bahira Governorate, just eastern of Alexandria, this governorate is very famous because it produces most of the rice for the country. All the part, actually, a significant part, about 30 kilometer length strip, about 30 kilometer parallel to the northern coast, can be submerged by water, which means that a significant amount of area, of agricultural area, will be damaged due to this. Especially that rising the sea level is not an easy issue. All the soil itself, the fertility of the soil will be completely damaged due to this rising. Accordingly, it cannot be dried again, or even if it happened, it will be complete saline soil, which will never be available for any cultivation after that. Also, the Bahira Governorate is highly populated. In this area, there's large cities like Kafr city, close to the Manhur city. All of these areas are exposed to harm for this. Then we transfer to the intermediate governorate, which is Kafr Sheikh. Also, Kafr Sheikh is very famous because of the producing of rice in the summer, especially for the country. And I forgot to say that the Bahira also is producing a lot of wheat for the country during the winter time. So in addition, Kafr Sheikh has a lot of fish cages and fish farms in the area, and accordingly damage to Kafr Sheikh also, including the population and including several industries, will be damaged. And then the same will happen for the Sahliya area and Port Said area. This is just by about something like half a meter of water is sea level raised half a meter. This will cause the entire city, including some thing very important, which is the Mosul lakes. Edco, Mariud, and the Boros Lake will be also getting very harmed from this issue.
Thank you so much for this overview. So now if we focus on water, the water quality will also be affected by sea level rise. Dr. Mohammed Bayoumi, can you tell us what will be the effects on irrigation water and on drinking water if the sea comes more into the Nile Delta?
First, that the sea level rise is not going to be the only impact, as you know, in connection to climate change in Egypt. There is another factor that was identified in the National Communication Report for Egypt, where national experts has actually analyzed the impact of climate change in the different sectors in Egypt. And water resources is another important factor. The climate change will affect the rainfall pattern over the upper Nile countries, which obviously will affect the flood of the river Nile, which is the main source of water in Egypt. So this is another factor that cannot be separated from the sea level rise, which there is a lot of uncertainty around how this is going to be affected. Obviously, the change in the water flow in the river Nile, in terms of quantity or quality as well, would affect the irrigation water at the end. This is from the south. From the north, obviously, an increase in the sea level rise would lead to seawater intrusion, desalinization of the groundwater in many parts, salinization of the lands itself, which makes some of the lands, as Dr. Khaled has mentioned, might not be suitable for cultivation anymore, or being flooded. And so we are facing a kind of salinization of the water from the sea, and uncertainty about the water quality in connection to the river Nile sources from the other hands.
So Egypt is, we know all, one of the most affected countries by climate change, but it's also interesting to see what is happening in Germany, and especially in the north of Germany, close to Hamburg. We have the fragile ecosystem of the Wadden Sea. Dr. Lim, could you please explain to us what is going to happen there?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, the North Sea is a very heavily used water body. We have 9 riparian countries there, and quite diverse kinds of coasts along there. We have a strong high coast in Great Britain, for instance, or in France, and then you have the Wadden Sea, which is a very flat coast along the sea level, probably a few centimeters above sea level, which extends from Germany, from Netherlands, Germany to southern Denmark. And what happened there is that humans have actually dwelt on the western coast, on the Wadden Sea coast, and have built dikes for the past millennium, more or less. And these dikes have been upgraded again and again, each after breaches in extreme events. And so now in the Wadden Sea area, the German coast and the Danish and the Dutch coast, we have a large system of high dikes extending up to 9.5 meters above sea level. So these are already in place to cover the 10,000 year event of an extreme flood. And so from the technical point of view, these areas are kind of prepared. But then there's also the mudflats and the Wadden Sea area outside the dikes, and these are going to be affected by sea level rise because the Wadden Sea is a very sensitive ecosystem. It only exists in this particular place in the world because it has a specific tidal change in tides between low tide and high tide, and this is very important to have this in this place. And if sea level changes, then also the tides change, and it may be that the currents in that area increase in strength and eat up the sediments of the Wadden Sea from the seaside. And on the other side, there are the dikes protecting the mainland. So the area in between is going to shrink eventually. We call this coastal squeeze, and meaning that the protected area, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, gets smaller and smaller throughout the next centuries.
Thank you. Now you were already mentioning some measures And I would like again to come back to Egypt and to look at what is there at the seashore. We already have walls protecting the seashore. The oldest one is dating back to Muhammad Ali. Are these walls sufficient? Can they be improved to counter sea level rise?
Actually, the government of Egypt had an authority named the Shore Protection Authority. This authority has been established in 1970s, and they are responsible for monitoring and constructing the entire protection system for shore protection, starting from the far west coast in Matruh Saloum up to Arish, and then also to the Red Sea coast. So both of these coasts are responsibility of this authority. This authority is belonging to the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation, and they are doing regular monitoring for every year, especially after the winter storms. They monitoring all the entire shore, and nowadays also using the satellite images facilitate many things before, because hydro surveying or sea surveys is not an easy issue. It's very tough and very costly, but now I think by satellite images start things to be much easier. However, it needs some technology and some techniques more advanced, so it needs another capacity building, but they are doing this. This is from and the authority are constructing and monitoring the critical locations every year, and they have different plans to protect many areas. It's not only the Muhammad Ali revetment in Alexandria. No, it's extended to El Boros area, extended to Port Said area, extended to El Arish area, El Saloum, everywhere. They have a plan, and they construct and they monitoring any damage after the winter storms especially. They are coming very fast and then start to repair it also. They start to construct, for example, wave breakers as a critical points, following all the engineering points of view or engineering techniques and approaches for protecting the entire coast. So, but for the problem coming is for the future now. So they are currently, like now, when we are talking about the sea level rise of 1 meter, this is a completely different issue. And this is another issue. It's costly a lot because it's not a normal design. It's not a normal design like I'm just designing to protect an eroded area after the windstorm or the winter storm or something like that. No, I have to redesign, I have to heightening all the walls, all the revetment, everything. This is actually shore protection structures are very costly also. And when you are getting to writing the cost of this structure from engineering point of view is getting to what calls exponential function. So its cost, it's jump very fast. So this is a problem.
So thank you for leading over to my next question. It is as if you had guessed it. It's my question to Dr. Mohammed Bayoum. It's so costly to protect the shores. So should there be also plans, or at least projects thinking about relocating some important industries or perhaps even some touristic resorts? I don't know if this is possible, to other regions where they would not be in danger and where it would be perhaps a longer-term perspective than always trying to protect from the next 10 centimeters of sea level rise, and at one point perhaps it won't be possible anymore.
I don't think that this decision can be made in this way actually. First of all, there is a need to develop a kind of a master plan or integrated coastal zone management plan, as we always call it. This is the first step in planning how to do the climate change adaptation for a place like the Nile Delta or the vulnerable north coast of Egypt. After this plan is set, and I'm not talking about an easy exercise, it's not a sophisticated modeling exercise to be able to identify and link the land use plans of the coast with the shore protection. At this stage, the government can decide, if we want to move some of the facilities to other places, or spend, and invest in protecting these facilities and leave other areas to the sea. This is what it's all about, the integrated coastal zone management, leave some areas to the sea and protect some areas and invest in the protection of some areas. But we wouldn't be able to identify this exercise until this plan is developed and complete. And the ultimate objective, actually, as we always say and trying to promote through the UN, is the mainstreaming of climate change into the national development plans. That is, we don't have an adaptation plan by itself with a cost estimate. No, this adaptation plan has to be integrated in the development plan. I want to do development on the coast. I can spend a little bit more money in order to take into consideration the climate factor. And after I take the climate factor the climate change factor into consideration, the decision comes again afterwards of what I want to do. There are scenarios, for sea level rise. The decision has to be made at the beginning that they want to have a system that can defend the coastal zones from 50 centimeter increase in the sea level rise, 1 meter increase. This is where I can put my resources and make my decisions. And this is not a static plan, this is a dynamic plan that every now and then is being revised according to the development of the situation. Maybe I start with a 50 centimeter defense system, which can be increased to 1 meter depending on the situation. This is how I see it, and we can go.
We will come back to this issue of integrated coastal zone management, but now let's see if we move to different measures. So building walls is one measure, but relocating would be perhaps another solution. And you mentioned already leaving some space to the sea. So there are examples in the Netherlands, I believe. Perhaps you could tell us a bit more, Dr. Link, and also tell us if you see a possibility to apply this in Egypt.
Well, coastal protection along the North Sea, for instance, is not just a measure of one thing. Building dikes is only possible in an area that's very homogeneous, like the area between the Netherlands and Denmark. But the other areas are quite heterogeneous, and it doesn't make sense to build dikes there. But we also have some islands outside the dikes in the Wadden Sea area and along the Frisian coast of the Netherlands and Germany that cannot be protected by dikes. So you have to do other coastal protection measures there. One thing is just natural protection, which means that you just let sit the island as it is. Which and what happens is that on one end of the island, the sea eats away the sediment and transports it along the coast of the island to the other end. So the net effect is that over the course of decades and centuries, the island actually moves in one certain direction.
But the houses don't move with the island?
This is usually done in islands where people don't build on the coast, but inland, and so they can actually, the speed is slow enough so that houses can be rebuilt after centuries in different places. Now, if you take tourist islands like the island of Sylt in Germany, which is very famous for its high society tourism, there have been hotels and very expensive houses built on the west coast. And this island used to move 1.8 meters a year eastward. And since now people built on the west coast, they have to build seawalls and also have to do beach replenishment, beach nourishment, in order to keep the sea from eating away the western shore. And so now this is an example where humans have actually interfered with the natural process and now are actually forced to redo beach replenishment every year, and they're doing this now for 2 or 3 decades now, and there's no end in sight, because if humans end doing this, eventually nature will take over and get to the human structures on the coast. And I think that's a very important point and a very important difference between the European or Wadden Sea or North Sea and Egypt right now. It's not a matter of quality or so, but the population density in the coastal zones of Germany, Denmark, France, and UK. They are much smaller than here in Egypt. And usually land is used for extensive greenland grazing for cattle or sheep, and for some planned agricultural production at the most, besides tourism, for instance. And so it's much easier to leave space open for flooding, which is also a plan to have certain areas that open the dikes in a small area, to have it flooded during extreme events so that the pressure is relieved from other areas. But that's something you can only do if you have the space and the ecological sites without having to move many people. And that may be a difficulty for Egypt in this case to just take over these kinds of approaches, because the human population that's affected is so much larger in this country.
And so there's even more need for the integrated coastal zone management, and we heard already about it, and there's a strategy that has been published in 2009, I believe. So what measures can be taken to put this strategy into action and to coordinate all the different levels and all the different topics that are really integrated management?
Now, actually, there is a special plan for climate change adaptation in the Ministry of Water Resources, and the plan is divided into different sections. One for water resources, which is dealing with what's going to happen for the entire water resources of the country, either surface water or groundwater. And the other one is for shore protection or sea level rise plans. And we have started to conduct all the proposed actions with a time period that, for example, will start by 2015 to 2020, each 5-year stage or steps, 5-year planning steps. Each step will be constructing of this protection system, and so on. The problem is that also the climate change problem is not only the responsibility of one ministry. It will be the responsibility of the other ministries, like Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Transportation, because the roads are going to be exposed to huge damage or huge problems. So all the international roads, for example, which pass across the entire delta, it's one of the exposed structures to climate change. However, people now or engineers find that the structure itself is a matter of matter of protection of the delta, because of the entire, it takes the entire length of the width of the triangular, the base of the triangular is about 200 or more kilometer, and this is a road, complete road. So this can be used and can be supported more or rehabilitated in order to tackle the problem if the sea level rise came. So Ministry of Housing also, or Ministry of Housing and Ministry of Interior will be responsible for evacuation problem, evacuation plans for people. However, I presented in the morning a map just seeing how the scattered is the villages and the cities in Delta. It's very tough and it needs a real plan for studying how can those people get either transferred or protected, because the problem is that it's a matter of scattered, it's a randomized scattered area. So it will not following a certain engineering line. So and this has been built thousands of years. It's not the result of today. It's thousands of years. So there is a plan now. However, in my opinion, that the problem will be when implementing these issues, this plan, the lack of budget, a lack of financial. Just because I'm sure that this will cost a lot of money, and from the point the decision maker, if he will compromise between what the country needs now and what the country needs in the 50 years, this is a significant issue. So we must prepare ourselves for this situation.
Yes, I mean, I will also come back to that, but before I would like to ask you, Dr. Bayum, as you were mentioning the need for mainstreaming the whole climate change issue and to integrate in a developmental strategy. We already hear there are so many actors and ministries involved if we only care about the coastal zone management. So if we do it in the whole development strategy, there will be even more actors and more difficulties to coordinate all this. Now, how to overcome it and how to make it effective, and I mean, how to translate all this into concrete action on the ground.
Talking about sea level rise, obviously the starting point is the plan to be set in place.